Hello and welcome back to a new Rage Gaming video. Today we're back talking more new Blue Protocol news thanks to various information we've had over the last few weeks. We've covered the game on the channel over 2020 with my anticipation only growing after playing in that first major beta and then all the news that's come for the game after. This action RPG could be compared to the Sword Art Online anime in its nature and how it visually looks, and has clearly drawn the attention of fans of Genshin Impact as well, especially those who want maybe a more varied game than just a gacha game, understandably. But while the devs are in their development cycle, news and updates have been coming more slowly and generally smaller updates at that. There hasn't been tons to talk about or look at, so we've also slowed down our coverage too, obviously. Thankfully, we do have some news today and some things to look at thanks to a recent Zoom conference with the devs. If this is your first time seeing the game though, or hearing about it, I definitely recommend my beta experience video just to give you an overview of the game. But for now, let's jump into the news. As always, thank you and shout out to the Blue Protocol database website. These guys translate the information and present it in such an easy to read and convenient way. Big thank you to what they do for the BP community. Now, as I mentioned, this news comes via a Zoom conference with the devs who mentioned some interesting details and thoughts about the game, about how it should be viewed as a whole. For this year, I've been looking at the game like it's an MMORPG, and well, the devs apparently see it differently. They explained that Blue Protocol is not exactly a massively multiplayer game in their eyes. They see it much more like an online action RPG instead of being your typical MMO. They hope for it to play out like a sort of anime movie realized in a game. And I could agree with that. I think they do a good job of that. Though, yeah, I couldn't understand the story because it was in Japanese. Its beats and cinematics and the conversations, the way the world is laid out, it's very streamlined and straightforward. And there isn't really much grinding of mobs for XP and drops that you might need for quests like you might imagine in a more standard Eastern MMO, which lets you bounce around story missions and see those cinematics much more often. There's solo dungeon encounters, an unusual exploration and challenges found in the game to a usual MMO. But still, to say that this isn't a MMORPG is still confusing to me. It certainly felt like one. Though yes, we're separated from other players by layers, like in many MMOs, the world was still absolutely packed. I mean, look at any time that I was hunting a mini-boss. The insane amount of players smashing that poor thing at once. The city was packed at all times, on all layers, and group content is obviously super important when it comes to, say, dungeons, the arena, or raiding, of course. Partying up for questing or exploring the gauntlets. These are all obviously important too, and you do them in big groups. So I think the tagline of a online action RPG still matches what an MMO really is. Maybe it's just not as huge as, say, millions of players because they cap out your layer of players, but perhaps also they expect a smaller player base in general. It's hard to say, but this is an important distinction made by the devs. I don't know if I agree with it. Either way, we now know after this meeting that the team working on BP is well over the triple digits now, despite working from home throughout all of COVID, which apparently hasn't caused any major issues now and won't cause future delays in the future. They've been able to continue the work well from their remote locations, which I've actually heard across many companies lately. Maybe it's more viable than people first thought to work from home on a schedule. And I wonder, after COVID finally is resolved, maybe companies will make greater use of remote work. What do you think? Do you think that's possible? Either way, they're continuing to recruit more and more people to the project. They're currently looking for game designers, localization directors, and also game AI engineers. Sadly though, we are still in that development phase. They actually mentioned how hard it's been to share what they're working on right now. Even though it's a lot and they've got stuff to show, they're making big changes often. So whatever it is that they do show us could be totally different the next month. So that's a bad idea. Either way, as always, it's just good to hear from them and them being so brutally honest about where the game's at currently, what they're planning, and what they're currently doing. Even when they can't show off tons of cool stuff directly through those live streams, they keep us updated, and I really like that. Now, last month during November 7th, we had this extremely short and intense stress test for the game for Japanese players only. And this gave the devs the chance to see how matchmaking will work for Blue Protocol in a large scale, absolutely packing the servers for what was only a few hours of game time. The prep for this required an update to the client, which was the source of that new data mine information that we broke down in a previous video. And I've never seen a dev team break down feedback and address it quite so well as these guys did back during that original beta. So I'm happy that they've mentioned their thoughts on the recent stress test too. Basically, it was intense. And unfortunately, they did have some issues to start with from people being disconnected from the server en masse during that test. Fortunately, after delaying things a bit and resolving the issue, they went on to successfully stress test the missions they needed to, and during that, they reported not a single fail or crash, which is really insane. And now they've pulled matchmaking time down to roughly like 15 seconds with their new matchmaking system, which obviously bodes really well for the full release of the game. In general, they've got new matchmaking ready for that release with logical updates like replacing players who left during a match with new people. But overall, it was a really important stress test for the devs, and to hear that it went well and that it was so useful to them is great to hear. But lastly, I'm happy to say we do have some teasers here and information about that new zone. That's right, the Salamzar Oasis hub that we had a look at during the last dev stream was revealed to be a full region to explore. Yep, just like I thought, this is a rocky desert biome with a massive terrain to go explore with some unique visuals to that zone too. They revealed a new enemy type, this snake-like imajinn, which looks really cool, but I wonder how big this is compared to the player. Do you think that's big or small? I really can't tell. Either way, this sandworm type or snake thing was accompanied by this overall shot of the zone, the desert environment that we'll enter as soon as we leave that rocky area on the right, which is actually the location for the Oasis town itself. It's good to see this extra context and see the zone a bit more fleshed out. Personally, I've always liked desert biomes, but my favorite for whatever reason has always been ice or snow biomes. And we did see in that leak that they are working on many various zones with fully fleshed out names and regions, and one of them is ice related, so there's a good chance there. But for now, that's everything major to talk about from the recent news in the last few weeks. I do try to make these recap videos when there is enough to talk about rather than just force it out over, say, one of these topics. But I get the feeling we're going to be waiting a little while now for anything major until the next year. I mean, recently we've talked about the data mined information, like the new classes coming to the game, whether this game will come to console or not, obviously the global release stuff, but I do think in the future, for now, until something major comes around, we're going to relax on coverage for a bit. The devs have done a great job, and I hope we can go into the new year with a successful launch coming in 2021, and hopefully, not long after that, the global release. Thank you very much for supporting these videos, guys. I really enjoy talking about this game. I'm really looking forward to Blue Protocol, and even though, yeah, I've got high expectations, I just feel like they're going to meet them, man. It's such a good dev team working on this one. For now, though, thank you again for watching. I've been Hollow, you've been you, and I'll see you in the next one.